The Substance is being called one of the most disgusting movies of the decade. And visually, yeah, that description isn't wrong. But if you stop at the gore, you miss what the film is really doing. Because the most disturbing thing in the movie isn't what happens to her body. It's the question the film quietly asks you when you look in the mirror and think, I'm tired, I'm aging, I'm not attractive anymore, I'm not enough. What is that I? Because if you truly were your body, you'd be disappearing every second. Your body replaces itself over time, cell by cell, year by year. Physically, you're not the same object you were a decade ago. And yet, somehow, you still feel like you, right? Yes. So, here's the question most people avoid. What if you were never your body to begin with? Let's slow this down. The Substance doesn't start with violence. It starts with a choice, not a desperate one, not a crazy one. A decision that feels reasonable, even natural, to treat the body as something you can replace. Elizabeth Sparkle is a woman who's told quietly, calmly, that her time is over. Not because she's dead, not because she's incapable, but because her body no longer fits what the system wants. So she's begin an option, not framed as cruelty, not framed as madness, just a solution, a way to stay visible, a way to stay useful, a way to continue by creating a newer, better version of herself. At first, it looks like a miracle. She doesn't disappear. She doesn't suffer immediately. She simply agrees to treat her body like a replaceable part, almost like a software update for the self. And that's where the story truly begins. Because from that moment on, Elizabeth isn't just living her life anymore. She's managing versions of herself. One version is allowed to exist in the light. The other is slowly pushed aside. Here's the idea the movie never says out loud. Your body exists in time. Your body exists in space. But you are the one aware of time passing, aware of space appearing. As moments come and go, as forms change and fade, you are the one noticing. And that's what makes this film terrifying, because Elizabeth's decision isn't science fiction. We make a version of it every day. Every time we tell ourselves, just get through today, fix the outside first. I'll tell you with the real stuff later. And then the film makes it explicit. A clinic representative, the voice of the system, looks at Elizabeth Sparkle and says, and I quote, at 50, it stops. He doesn't shout it. He doesn't need to. He says it like a weather report. And that's the part that should keep you up at night. Because it sounds exactly like what we already tell ourselves. Once you hit 50, that's just how it is. So let's look at the first important moment in this film again. Not as horror, but as a mirror. And ask one simple question. What breaks first? The body? Or the belief that your body was ever you? If that question felt uncomfortably familiar, good, you're in the right place. I'm Jay Lee, and this is Deeper into Film, Insight and Awakening. On this channel, we don't watch movies to escape reality. We watch them to confront it, to notice the things we usually spend our whole lives avoiding. So now, back to the horror. Because before the Substance becomes a bloodbath, something much quieter happens. From the moment we are born, we are sold a simple equation. You are your body, your face, your age, your condition, and so on. We say it every day. I look old. I'm falling apart. I'm not what I used to be. But stop for a second. Who is the one noticing that change? Because if something can be observed, measured, judged, compared, can it really be you? No, you're not the object being looked at. You're the one doing the looking, right? Yes. And that's why the real horror of the Substance doesn't start with a needle. It starts with an agreement. Elizabeth Sparkle accepts a deadly idea that her body is a product, something to be upgraded, something to be optimized, something to be replaced. And that single moment of yes is more violent than any gore scene in the film. Because once you accept that logic, your body stops being you. It becomes a tool, a container, a system you have to manage. And if that sounds familiar, it should. This mistake has a long history. In Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Jekyll believed he could split himself in two, keep the parts society approved of, use the parts it didn't, and most importantly, stay in control. But the moment Hyde became useful, he also became powerful. The same thing happens here. Elizabeth doesn't just change her body. She divides herself. One version becomes acceptable. The other becomes expendable. One becomes the asset, and the other becomes the waste. And at that point, this stops being a Jekyll and Hyde story. It becomes Dracula. This is the vampire logic. Not the fangs, not the cape, the logic. The idea that youth doesn't exist on its own. It survives by feeding on something else. In the substance, the better version doesn't simply replace Elizabeth. She consumes her. She drains her time, her energy, her literal body, just to stay visible a little longer. This is the vampire logic of our modern world. The better version of you isn't your partner. It's a predator. And once you treat yourself as fuel, you stop being human. And in our world, this way of thinking has a name: optimization. We've started treating ourselves like AI, like machines, like systems to be updated, replaced, and eventually discarded. But you aren't a machine, and neither was Elizabeth Sparkle. That's the real horror of the substance. Not that her body changes, but that she starts thinking about herself the same way a corporation thinks about a product. And here's the unsettling part. At first, it feels reasonable. There's no screaming, no panic, just a calm, ordinary thought. Like, this body isn't working anymore. But that thought is a trap. Because the moment you believe your body is broken, you've already accepted something far worse. Naturally, something physical, something breakable, something disposable. And that's why the most disturbing part of the film isn't that there are two versions. It's that both versions believe they are quote-unquote me. This is where the film stops being science fiction and starts being your phone. Think about Instagram. It doesn't just show you images. It trains you to look at yourself as an image. You start seeing your own body, your face, your life from the outside. Not as something you live, but as something you manage. And once your identity is tied to appearance starts competing with itself. Yesterday's version of you is suddenly obsolete. You don't need a monster under the bed when the system does the job quietly. And that's why the substance feels so familiar. And that's not sci-fi. That's a scroll. Let's talk more about the war of the younger and the older versions. In the film, the younger version isn't just replacing the older one. She's erasing her. And we do this every day. Every anti-aging cream, every filter, every small tweak. Each one is a quiet attack on the person you were yesterday. Be smoother, be younger, be better than who you were. Until one day you look in the mirror and you don't know who you are anymore. Because when identity is tied to appearance, the body stops being a home and turns into a product. And once that happens, the product starts competing with itself. Here's what the movie is trying to show you. Time happens to the body. Change happens to the body. But awareness does not wrinkle. And if that's true, then most of our fears collapse. Fear of aging, fear of replacement. Notice something important. The scariest scenes in the substance are the calmest ones. No one stops Elizabeth. No one says, "Hey, wait, who are you really?" Because society already agrees you are what you look like. And that's the real horror. Now, think again about that man in the film. The one who represents the system's voice says, at 50, it stops. Notice something strange. He is clearly over 50 himself. And yet, he's untouched by the rule he's announcing. Why? Because he is not speaking as a person. He's speaking as a system. In that moment, he's not a human being with a body. He is closer to money. Money doesn't age. Money does not expire. Money just circulates. And when someone speaks for the system, they do not feel the cost of what they are saying. They just enforce it. So, let me ask you. Tell me, between the person you were 10 years ago and the person you're today, what actually changed? Your sense of humor? Your capacity to love? That quiet voice in your head that's always been there? Or was it just the surface? Because if only the surface changed, maybe the body is not you. Maybe it never was. And that's why the ending of the substance is so haunting. Elizabeth doesn't win. She doesn't fix herself. She doesn't reclaim her youth. In the final chaotic moments, we see a collapse of form. But look at what's left. She crawls toward the star-shaped space, right there in the middle of the street. Not in the laboratory, not in some digital heaven. Right in the mess of the real world.
Elizabeth Sparkle, you're incredible.
Oh, you young ones are too sweet.
You're a true icon. Look at that smile.
Your wrinkles show your wisdom and beauty.
Here's to many more years.
A star isn't something you become through a needle or a procedure. It's what you already are once you stop confusing your existence with your reflection. That final moment is not about escaping life. It's about recognition. You don't need to be upgraded. You don't need to be replaced. You are never missing. You are the light that makes the image possible in the first place. If we look at the substance this way, the entire movie changes. It's no longer asking, how far would you go to stay young? It's asking something much more dangerous. Who are you? If the body is just something you experience and not something you are. And once that question lands, you do not need the jump scares anymore. The horror is not in the special effects. The horror is how familiar that feeling of separation has become. If this video stayed with you, it's not because of the gore. It's because something in you recognized the truth behind the mask. I'm Jay Lee, and this is Deeper into Film. Here, we don't just watch movies. We use them to remember who we are, before the body, before the mirror, and before time. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.